Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 75 of Studio 8.1 with myself, Jarvis Todd, sorry, not the editor, the publisher of Telemedia Magazine, Telemedia Online, and this guy, Paul Skeldon, who is the editor. He writes all the news and he knows what he's talking about. We're going to recap the third, really, in the previous series of conference sessions that we hosted in Dubai at World Telemedia in May of this year. We started off by looking at traffic generation, advertising, and all those kinds of everything related to that. We then moved on last week to payments, but this week we are focusing on content. Paul, thank you very much for joining me. Can I say once again, what an excellent session you put together. Definitely one of my favorites so far.
Yeah, well, they were all good. It's like with children, it's best not to have a favorite. But yeah, no, it was good. And this, as you say, is the sort of third in our sort of World Telemedia Dubai wrap-ups. We've done billing and payment. We've done traffic generation. This is the sort of third leg of the telemedia tripod, the content side of things. And
Sure. And for those of you that don't know, I mean, the MVAS umbrella is broad, and we're talking about essentially any kind of premium content or service that high-tech consumers that are on the move using their connected devices are likely to be paying for. Those services would include things like games, gaming, sports, esports, news, movies, short-form and long-form video content, education, edutainment, wellness. The list goes on and on. But if you were able to join us in Dubai, you would have had an opportunity of hearing some real experts dive deep into the world of content, and we're going to be referencing quite a lot of points from that session. However, to kick off, Paul has highlighted a very interesting story, which you'll find on Telemedia Online. Why don't you tell us a bit more about this one, Paul?
well,
It
I
sets the
just put
scene really nicely.
I put this in to sort of set the scene because a lot of the discussion in the content, sort of the main content session we did at the event in Dubai, circled around and kept coming back to games and esports, and I just thought I'd sort of kick it off really with this article we run this week on the Telemedia website about Twitch, which is a sort of gaming streaming platform. And it essentially just puts into context the sort of power of game streaming. So it's sort of opening gambit is that Netflix put out its Squid Game season three very recently for those that are tuned into Netflix, and it got 368.4 million hours watched in 3 days. However, in the same 3 days, Twitch streaming games logged 4.64 billion hours.
Wow.
So there's an awful lot of people streaming their games out there. The story goes on into sort of other details about sort of the streaming of games and that side of the content business. But I thought I'd just throw that out there just to put some numbers on it because it's such an enormous part of the content market. And as I say, a lot of the discussion circled around gaming because that's where the sort of immediate money I think is with content. There's lots and lots of other aspects of it there's a long list as you reeled off some of them there. But I think in the context of looking at sort of a key MVAS service, games, and as we shall see, esports as well, which is people watching people playing games, um, is massive as a traffic generator and a revenue generator. And that's what the guys on the panel were talking about, really.
Yeah. I mean, I think also what that story illustrates perfectly is how dramatically the media landscape is changing. And, one might automatically think that, Netflix quite rightly is a major player, but I mean, actually, the Twitch numbers, make Netflix pale into insignificance, and all of those things are going to be important, not only for anybody that's hosting services, but obviously, I guess, as an advertising medium as well.
Oh, totally, absolutely. And I think it just shows you where the consumer sort of eyeballs and wallet is currently focused. And then, yes, that does definitely impact advertising. Certainly impacts traffic generation because the content for your advertising for traffic generation and the Google search terms you use and all that sort of stuff. Sort of, it has to center around driving this kind of use.
Mm.
But equally, this kind of content also drives people to use it, as we'll see. They keep coming back for more because it's very sticky.
Mm. Well, as I agreed, as I mentioned earlier on, there are many forms of content. We're going to focus in a little bit more on gaming and esports because those seem to be certainly two areas which are eye-catching to say the least. And these were covered off quite nicely in that session that you hosted in Dubai. Why don't you set the scene and talk us through why these areas? I mean, just to put this in context, companies like Cookies were promoting this at World Telemedia heavily back in
Mm.
2020, and now, given the numbers we've just seen from that story with regards to Twitch, it really does seem as though these are two areas that just can't be ignored if you're in the MVAS sector, right?
Yeah, absolutely, and it's big business with some big numbers. I mean, the Twitch story sort of exemplifies some of it, but Kamal Sharma from Hungama, which a lot of its business is in games and variations on the gaming theme. He put it quite nicely, putting some numbers around how they see sort of particularly esports and the gaming side of things looking. This is what he had to say at the conference.
Spending, uh, if I were to command that, say, out of 10 hours, they spend about more than 3 to 4 hours on playing games. And, I'm a father of a son of 17 years old. I mean, I keep hearing a lot of noise coming in from his room mid in the night, and he's talking to somebody. Sometime he tries to speak in Spanish. I was surprised. I mean, that's the level of engagement it has come to a level, rather than just watching a streaming
Right.
of a normal game. We're now getting into a virtual world. They have a virtual world. Minecrafts of the world, PUBGs of the world. We as an organization, we are also into the same industry where we organize tournaments, right? And there are about 30 players, be it PUBGs of the world or Minecrafts of the world, right? They go online, they meet online. Even if I know you, Paul, probably you never know, I might meet you virtually there, and we.
So, as we agreed ahead of that clip, esports and gaming is a massive business, but more importantly, it's a massive cultural shift. And the typical telemedia consumer, is now operating in an entirely new virtual world, which presents its own challenges to marketeers, advertisers within the telemedia sector.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the thing, isn't it? That the point that Carmel makes so sort of well, really, is that it's no longer about just advertise a service. People will click on it, play it, some money will change hands, and that's great. They're living it, and they're living it in a very different way, and it's almost like a sort of social, it's an online virtual social gathering, really, and sort of monetizing that's quite difficult, but also creating the content for it is really difficult as well. It's hard to create MVAS content that fits in with this sort of new model because the way people play it is all totally different, and they want these different kinds of experiences, which is something that James Flaherty from Perpetua Media explained very well on the same panel.
The HTML5 games we make, the budgets aren't that big, so we're not talking multiplayer or online play, that
Right.
kind of thing. It's more single player, right? So the question is, will those feature sets work in a VOS world, right? Because if games, so take APKs or Android games, those games get updated all the time.
All the time, yeah.
If I have to update that every single time in the MVOS world, it's just not going to work,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So we've come across that early on. So that's part of our challenge. So we kind of focus on those offline games, those single player experiences. So we're limited, but there's other markets out there where we'll be able to do that. Just in MVOS, it's a little harder to manage.
So we mentioned that the content landscape is challenging for the MVAS community, but that does not make it impossible or indeed a massive opportunity. Very important to remember that numerous games formats sit on numerous platforms. They are multiplayer, they are viewed and streamed. And as we've pointed out in many areas of the telemedia industry, it is a convoluted web in which we work, but the opportunities, if you can untangle that, are clearly there for the telemedia industry. Perhaps it would be useful, Paul, to just sort of spec out what the guys were talking about in terms of the different formats and the different platforms and the different challenges for a typical MVAS advertiser, merchant, or content producer.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that the sort of point that's being made is this sort of shift in how people, in this instance, do gaming, how they play games. Typically, up until fairly recently, a game was something that you would play as an individual. So you'd probably download it as an app and play it that way locally on your phone, but just you. That model was also replicated online. So some of these HTML5 games was basically the same idea. You'd be playing Candy Crush, but on online. What's changed is that increasingly, and particularly sort of younger users, are playing sort of collaboratively. So it's no longer a thing that sits on your phone that you just play on your own on the train or whatever. I mean, that's still massive business, and that's the side of it that really works with MVAS. But what's starting to happen is more and more people are playing collaboratively and playing against each other and playing these tournaments, which is where this esports side of it comes in, which is sort of a service that you pay to watch where other people are playing each other on these games, if that makes sense. So that's one way of monetizing it, is through this esports model. But there have to be other ways of monetizing it, because as all these younger people who are used to playing collaboratively sort of become the mainstream market, then there's a danger that sort of individual gaming sort of stops being such a big thing, and that the MVAS market has to find a way of monetizing these collaborative games or watching people play them. And we'll come to a bit later on how that might work through sort of subscriptions. But what was interesting is that while this is an issue, and it's an issue that James pointed out there, that for his company, they still largely just focus on single player games, but there are opportunities. MVAS shouldn't ignore how HTML5 games are developing. As Kamal said,
The form that when we talk about HTML5 browsing based game, whether will it continue forever, given the fact that we're talking about online gamers, people becoming smart, the core gamers, whether people would love to continue to browse the game, the HTML5? The answer is yes. Why? There's a fatigue of downloading an application every time.
Right.
If there's a new service being introduced, we say, hey, I have an application for Android or Apple Store. But we forget one thing, that people really don't want to carry more than 8 or 9 applications. Even if you have it on your phone, somewhere or the other, you will decide to remove it completely, right? And that's where...
or just never use it.
Or never use
happens,
it.
isn't it? It just sits there.
That's where the HTML5 game comes into play, and that's where we strongly believe. We work with, we're partners, by the way. So we on a daily basis we track the consumption which is happening on browsing, right? That's insane. I mean, people are consuming on browsing base rather than just opting for an application.
So it's an interesting point, that, because over the years we have talked about the importance of trying to get native apps on phones and all that kind of thing. But of course, the issue has constantly been, it's all very well having the app on the phone, but will people open it? How frequently do they open it? Do they just delete it? And this again comes back to the whole issue of where your platform resides for the games, in this case, service that you're trying to provide. So again, it seemed as though people were coming back to a very more positive view of HTML and some of the advantages that offers, particularly from an MVAS service point of view. Do you want to kind of put that into context a little bit for us?
Yeah, I think so. In the wider sort of content world, it's an interesting sort of trend that is emerging, in that not just with games, but there is a sort of view that people are going to start to err away maybe from apps and be going back towards things that are web based. Because you think about how you kind of use your computer and software and stuff in your sort of daily working life. A lot of it is now cloud based. Like, you know, we're using Zoom to record this, but it doesn't sort of necessarily live on your computer. It's all being done out there in the internet. And there's an argument that a lot of the things that are done on apps are also just going to go that way. As broadband connectivity is better and more ubiquitous, and we move in that direction. There is an argument that you might take a lot of the smartness off the phone and put it back into the network. There's all this edge computing where it lives at the edge of the network, or it's buried sort of deep in the network itself, but it's no longer on the phone. And I think this HTML5 gaming trend is maybe the vanguard of that kind of move. So it's moving away from being an app based, having hundreds and hundreds of apps that you forget you've got most of them on your phone, to just like probably, I guess, asking the AI in your phone to find you the thing you're looking for, and it will just suck it out off the internet and put it in front of you.
Yeah,
I think that's where it's all going, not just in gaming, but in content and services and everything generally. Which, of course, is a challenge for how you monetize that, and where the sort of payment comes in. Though, it's a whole other story about agentic commerce where AI just does all that for you and does the paying because it's got your bank details. But that's probably a discussion for another day.
yeah, agreed. So we've established that there's issues with regards to where the particular gaming services reside. Are they on the phone? Are they in the cloud? Are they online on a website? But if we move away slightly to from the technical platform aspect of it, ultimately, of course, we've talked about this a million times. Content is only king if it's continually refreshed, if it's continually improved, and therefore continually keeps the user or the subscriber, ideally in the telemedia space, interested. So I guess that there are some advantages in terms of how you're presenting the games and the services to the users. If you need to constantly refresh and keep things new, there are advantages to where those services and are located and how they're delivered, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the sort of discussion about how that all works is one thing. The real sort of problem with it is keeping it fresh, keeping more and more content keep coming through, because people are playing more and more games, but they're getting bored much more quickly with the ones that they've got and want the next thing and the next thing and an addition, and to move that along. And that's one of the things that sort of came out of the discussion, was that it's all very well worrying about how to deliver them, but what you really want to focus on is keeping the amount of content fresh so that you can keep users coming back, and how to make users in such a competitive market increasingly sticky. And it was here that James shared some stuff about what Perpetuum does to make their HTML5 games sort of program attractive and easy to use, which is in itself a tool for making people come back. This is what he said.
Disney game, so that works to our favor. And there's new games that have been coming in, but that is a challenge, right? I mean, some of the stuff gets older, or some of the stuff is just competing with new products on the marketplace. So we're looking at ways of packaging it, doing things, creating new services. We've built, so we're not just onboarding games now. We have services, and we can build our own channels to push product in a way that's TikTok-ish. We call it Quick Fun. It's our own little service, but we're using. What's the word I'm looking for? The way people use apps, we're putting that into our services that we build. Kind of like how I used to build games. If I was building a fighting game, I'll just take the Tekken controls and stick them in there, because I'm not going to try to retrain somebody.
Right.
It's how you address those people. Make it easy and seamless for them to use. So that's one way we do it. But it's always about new content, fresh content. So we're looking for that as well too. And I'm knocking on the Fox stuff for Disney, because they have The Simpsons, and who knows,
Yeah.
I mean, give me something new. That's the mantra.
So interesting. Perhaps an obvious point that you need to kind of continually refresh and your content and diversify and make it continually interesting for the user. But also the way that it is discovered, which I think we've touched on before in previous episodes, is really, really important. And James is obviously linking the discovery mechanisms. And I think we've also seen other content providers talk about this before in terms of replicating formats like the TikTok swipey thing, which is essential, right? In terms of, there's no point of refreshing your content service if discovery doesn't also go side by side with that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's really interesting. You've just got to do it like people are used to. So everybody's now used to looking through YouTube Shorts or TikTok by like just scrolling, you know, within a split second deciding whether you're going to linger or not. And they have to do that with the games content. For the wider MVAS content market, it applies to everything. You have to do this sort of thing for every kind of content because that's now the kind of default sort of interface for doing it, which is one sort of main way of keeping people coming back for more. And I guess the sort of marketing and traffic generation is to get them to that scrollable site initially, and then they find the game they want. I mean, I
Make
guess,
sure the content's sticky.
yeah, but if you look back at our previous podcast or the one before last about sort of content about traffic generation, it does still work the other way that you put up a good advert on social media for a particular game and people will go to it. But I guess the scrolling through bit is then done on the social media bit where you come across the advert. So it's sort of essentially the same, but there's many ways to skin a cat. Each of these, you have to do all of these things to get people to come to your content. Unless, of course, you use particular kinds of content which keep people coming back for more anyway.
Yes, well, I think you're probably back in the esports ring.
Absolutely, and also esports and sports content. And this was something we sort of got onto then with Roxanne from MobiBase, who specialise in sports content and esports content, and she made some very good points about how that kind of content is inherently sticky, and I think sort of keeping that idea in mind with whatever you're doing is very interesting and useful for sort of getting people to your content. This is what she said.
We have very high performing content that are the esports and sports live events inside or outside TV channels, but that's what really drives a lot of engagement from the users because it finally creates an appointment based moment. So the users have an habitual behavior to come back to the services to watch, let's say, the weekly live, for example. So it really helped to make them come again and renew the subscription. And also sports and esports have a high emotional impact. So when you get emotion, again, they are more likely to renew the subscription because they want to come back and they are really, they feel a real attachment to the service and the content.
I guess with sport as well, the content sort of updates itself, doesn't it, constantly?
And you have something like which is segmented, refreshed, high value perception for the content. So we have like the combination of everything that really drives engagement.
So that's really interesting, isn't it? Because we started off with the Twitch story, which was comparing Netflix versus Twitch. And, you pointed out quite rightly that Twitch is smashing Netflix. But what we're talking about here, listening to Roxanne, is the way that esports is being presented as a service and the way that they're kind of considering their channels. It's as much about broadcasting content as it is about being a content source. So I mean, again, it goes back to what I said earlier. I mean, talk about the media landscape changing so dramatically and having such a different opinion and a view on that. And of course, when we talk about telemedia billing models, the best one and the one that everyone loves is subscription. And we're talking about subscription models to esports, which actually feels a bit like a TV channel in many ways, which is, of course, exactly what Netflix model is as well. So the similarities between broadcasters and MVAS content providers in the esports space are so similar. It's extraordinary. And again, we all talked earlier on about how those channels are also attracting advertising, which means really that original story that you brought up, comparing those two, was actually almost a sort of like for like in many ways. But look, we've dealt with esports, Paul. Let's talk. One of the great things about telemedia and one of the wonderful things that we pointed out earlier is that there is a huge broad church of premium content that every consumer out there in every different geo is different, and telemedia covers all of those. It was really interesting to start seeing some of the newer hotter types of content, if you like. And we've been hearing about this now, I suppose, for a couple of years. I think wellness and some of those other more, well, what we would have perhaps called niche content services are really becoming, well, really notching up some big numbers.
Yeah, it's big business. I mean, it's always been a sort of peripheral side of things, that and sort of edutainment and things like that. But over the sort of pandemic, particularly during lockdown, and I guess subsequently, people have been much more focused on their well-being and health, and so it really surged, and it still keeps going. And I think as well, this sort of increased focus of people, particularly young people, playing games and using social media and living in many ways a much more isolated physically life. It's throwing up sort of its need for more wellness. And this is one of the sort of it kind of worked really well with the panelists talking about gaming, even though it was about wellness. But Ashmita Dhingra from AIS was talking about their wellness app, but about how it's booming because of gaming, and how the two are sort of inextricably linked, but in a weird way that you wouldn't expect. This is what she had to say.
It's a global phenomena, and honestly, with the time, it's just been about a month and a half that we've launched in, and we've got our major audience coming in from the European countries, and predominantly, I think the if we're talking about the wellness domain, it's very difficult for people to actually go out and speak about it. It's very easy to be isolated and playing a game, but it's very difficult to actually go out and talk about there is an issue that I have, whether it's physical or mental, anything. So at the end of the day, it is a global phenomena, and somewhere or the other, as users, we still are not very much familiar with how and where to actually go out for it. Everybody cannot reach out to a counselor. Everybody cannot really, for whatever means they have. It's not easy for people to approach to the other person. So domains like ours would, kind of be their secret space where they could vent out. And I think I would honestly say a lot more people to explore this domain, only for the fact that this is still an untouched market and is of a high demand. And there are a lot of consumers, especially when I talk about the Gen Zs and the millennials, we are getting isolated. There's more of social media, but there's less of interaction. So somewhere or the other, there is turbulence somewhere. And when we approach it in the right direction, there is a huge potential and there is a huge market there. So, and I think we have consumers of every age for this. And in the content fraternity, I would honestly say that there is a lot to explore, and there's a really untapped market here, which we should explore together.
So what's really interesting here, I think, is that we've talked quite a lot over the last 20 years about how the people that run telemedia content service providers are actually quite a long way away from the actual users. And that is in itself a major challenge. But what's really nice about listening to Ashmita talk, and she's been in the business now for 10 years, is there's a real authenticity about the services that she's created. Because if you look at her LinkedIn profile, it says it's a holistic wellness application that provides a safe and friendly space to detoxify yourself step by step, promoting mindful living for the calmer and more focused life. Now, goodness me, we've just been talking about the chaos of gaming and esports and the high tension, and yet this is so on point with regards, to certainly, what I understand as being cultural imperatives in the 2025. And it just goes to show how the MVAS industry and the content sector within the telemedia industry is such a broad church now. There's space for absolutely everybody, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, one thing as an aside that was quite interesting is that, as you say, that the sort of MVAS telemedia world has been run by increasingly aging people like ourselves. But even some of those are sort of admitted on this panel that they too are intrigued and use wellness, and I think it's all right to talk about that kind of thing now.
Yeah,
So,
100%.
so yeah, it's big business, and I think sort of it is an antidote to this hectic world of esports and gaming and social media and constant sort of bombardment. So yeah, it's going to be huge, but it's just part of a growing trend, I think, where things get mixed together. Ashmeter goes on to say in that panel, for the people who want to sort of check out that, should sit and listen to the whole thing, because it's got
Yeah,
some really excellent sort of stuff. It goes all over the place with it. But yeah, they're working music into their wellness app, so you can create and use sort of tunes that help you with your breathing and your relaxation, and curate wellness playlists and all that kind of thing. Similarly, Hungama, who do a lot of games, are also we talked about it in Barcelona. I did a really nice little video demo with Hungama about their sort of rhythm games. They've created a whole new genre of gaming which involves games that involve movement on your screen, that you're tapping to do stuff that's in rhythm with a tune that you like.
yeah. No, I've noticed that.
Yeah, it's really cool. It's really addictive, and it's a massive idea. I think it's really a really neat idea. But this thing of like music is a content type, but music being involved in other things, particularly gaming, particularly wellness, and other things that people are doing, are increasingly sort of creating these new kinds of content types that are mixtures of more than one thing. I
Yeah,
think we're
yeah.
going to see a load more of that kind of stuff coming along, as people start to work out sort of mixtures that work and that sell well.
Yeah, no, I agree. Just a reminder to anybody, if you are interested in the kind of stuff we're talking about, do remember to like us, subscribe, and follow us, and you will receive regular updates on the content that we are putting up on our YouTube channel. Also, I would urge you please to go to wtevent.com, go to the conference page, and you can re-watch all of the conferences from beginning to end through our website. Paul, before we finish, as I said at the beginning of the episode, a really, really great session, a fantastic array of panelists that are, true experts in the content field. But as we've talked about many times, we stopped doing the AI session because, of course, AI has now infiltrated absolutely every aspect of the telemedia industry, whether it's marketing and advertising, whether it's content, whether it's payments, it doesn't really matter. Going back to the session in Dubai, of course, you've got this panel of experts, supremely skilled in terms of relaying to the audience what is going on in the content landscape. But you, of course, had to bring up the AI question. So let's just finish up by listening and talking to you about some of the observations that were made with regards to the mighty AI.
Yeah, well, obviously, like you say, it has to be brought up. We didn't do a session about AI because it underpins now, or is involved in every single part of what we do. But obviously had to sort of bring it up in terms of how it pertains to the sort of content side of things. One of the things that was most strongly sort of brought up was the idea that it's great for creating content, but equally it's great for creating fake content. And there's a lot of stuff surfacing using sort of IP that belongs to Disney or whoever, where AI is creating illegally use of that kind of content, repurposing stuff that's already out there and turning it into something new. And that's a massive issue. I mean, it's a massive issue that James from Perpetuum has talked about several times at our conferences, and how you sort of counteract that. It's a problem that's only escalating because of AI. So there was a lot of sort of talk about that side of AI, the sort of dark side, but there are positives with it. It is a vital tool for creating content. It's also a vital tool for helping you run your content business, and that was something that I've thrown in sort of towards the end here, because it's sort of slightly off point, but I think also something that everyone can really learn from. This idea that you need to use AI to help you like run the actual business, create the content, do all of those things together. And Kamal Sharma from Hungama said this about it.
What AI can help us structure our operations better. It can help us frame it better, sort of help recommend something which is relevant to the consumers. But again, where there is a data, you need to apply your data rather than just being reliant on AI. So AI will be disaster if you're relying on data, but the framework, structure, beat.
Yeah, I think Kamal is absolutely right. It can be a support system, but not something which is going to drive anything. So yeah, as a support, it was Google first, and now it's the AI for us. So it's just a support system, but at the end of the day, we need to drive things ourselves.
Okay, so perhaps no surprises there. I mean, this is a consistent message that we're hearing with regards to AI. Part of it might be wishful thinking, but for the purposes of this vodcast, let's assume it's not. But I do remember going back to the very first conference sessions that I heard, perhaps at Affiliate World, maybe 3 or 4 years ago, with regards to AI, and the message was very much loud and clear. It is a tool. You need to be in control, which I suppose sort of feels fairly obvious, but it's still, as I say, part of it might be wishful thinking, but certainly it seems to be a consistent message throughout that it's an incredible tool for the telemedia industry. But it's only as good as the way you use it, the way you manage it, and the data that you put into it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's something we all find in our daily life with it, is that it is a useful tool, but you've got to know how to control it. You've got to get it to work for you rather than tell you what to do. And the data you give it, you need to, make sure it does like good stuff with it. And I think you've also got to kind of know what it's going to spit out makes sense or not.
Yeah.
Because you can sort of go back to it and go, that doesn't sound right, and it'll go away and look at it again. I don't know whether anyone out there has tried this, but if you get stuff out of Chat GPT, if you go back in and say, I don't think that's right, it will come up with something else. I think you need to have that in mind. You need to know what it is you're trying to achieve with it. And I think from a content point of view, you've got to, it's great for understanding audiences and what content goes to which audience and when and how. But really, you've got to also have in your mind what that should look like and let the AI do the sort of grunt work rather than actually
Yeah.
dictate the strategy.
Yeah.
I think, I mean, that applies to everything with AI in every facet of life, but it's particularly sort of prevalent here. And it's what all these guys sort of say. They all agree that it's an excellent tool, but you've got to be careful how you use it, and you've got to know what you're trying to achieve and try and get the AI to help you get there rather than it decide for you where you're going. But ultimately, what it comes down to, this whole content world, is having good content. That's the only thing really that matters. And to round things off, I think the quote of the session, certainly if not the whole show, came from Roxanne from Mobibase, who had this to say.
Well, if you want user engagement, if you want them to also come back, so of course you have to refresh the content. You have to give them content that they perceive as value content. This perception is extremely important, because you could give the best content you want to a target if it's not well segmented, if it's not what fits really with the need of this target. Even again, the best content, you won't have the performance you're looking for. So it's coming back to the basic. You are
got to have good content.
Yeah, you are creating a value-added service. I think it's something that we all too often forget.
Yeah.
We just want, to put a lot of budget in the marketing to have flashy banners and great campaigns, and you put so much money inside of that, and you just forget that content is not just, the cherry on top. That's the cake.
Yeah.
That's
I
that's
agree.
the engine. Again, well segmented, well chosen, well targeted content, refresh, high perception of the value from your target user.
So there you have it. Thank you, Roxanne. Content is not the cherry on top. That's the cake. So there you are. We finished up with our 3 series of covering the Dubai sessions. Again, I would urge you all to go to wtevent.com to relive some of those moments. I mean,
Yeah, and there's way more. I mean,
yeah,
there's all the other things around how you make this work and everything. We've just tried to sort of bring the key bits together. But yeah, go and check out the rest of it because there's a huge amount of information there for some very good and knowledgeable speakers.
yeah, agreed. Please do. And of course, Paul is now in overdrive, putting together an equally fantastic session or series of sessions for World Telemedia Marbella, 5th, 6th, 7th of October. There are some sponsorships available. Please sign up before the 31st of July to save yourself a few quid. It's going to be another record-breaking show. Paul, I've really enjoyed reliving some of those moments from Dubai. Thanks for all that fantastic work. I guess we're going to take a break for the summer, but please do get in touch with us if you want to get involved with Marbella, if you've got a great story to tell. Please do remember to like, subscribe, and or comment on any of the topics that we've discussed on our YouTube channel, or indeed on any of the other platforms that you're watching our various podcasts. We thank you for watching. And Paul, thanks very much for your time, mate. Have a great summer.
Yeah, you too, mate. Enjoy your summer. We'll reconvene to talk some more stuff about, well, what's coming up, I guess, in the weeks and months ahead in Marbella and beyond in September.
I see you've already broken up. Clearly,
Got my holiday shirt on. I'm straight off to the airport. I'll put my holiday hat on.
I don't blame you.
Off
Have
we
a great
go.
summer. Have a great summer, everyone. Thanks, Paul. I'll see you in the fall.
You will indeed. Adios.
Take care. Thank you.